Welcome back to another episode of Ideas to Human Better. My name is Eva Payne, and I am your host today. And it is an honor and privilege to bring you Sammie. She is 47 years old. She works as an information professional in higher education, and she attended the Flow Life Retreat back here in April. I think it was April. Sammie, was it April that year? Hold on, let me pop you into the stream. Was it April? Was that you were in April, right?
Yeah, it was April. It was only like 2.5 weeks ago, I think.
Oh my goodness, it feels like it's been so long. So many things have happened since then.
I know. A friend of mine asked me how long it had been because she noticed how different I was. And I was like, has it really only been 2.5 weeks?
I want to thank you so much for being willing to come on. And, I understand there's a lot of stigma still around psychedelic use and psilocybin. And so I just appreciate you even just being willing and to share your testimony here on this podcast for people who are interested in having this kind of experience and the benefits of it. I think the more that we can talk about it in the world and put it out there, that's how we reduce the stigma around it. And that's how people can, feel safer for themselves to go out and try it, especially when they're really in a stuck place in their life and they've tried everything else. So I just want to honor you and thank you for being willing to come on and talk about your life pre and then how your experience was at the retreat and now what your life is like now. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yay. Okay, so let's just dive in first. So, what was your life like prior to coming to the retreat? Who were you? What were some of your struggles? And how did you find it?
Yeah, okay. So I would say like before the retreat, my general like state has been kind of a low depressed and anxious state, for a lot of my life, to be honest. But in recent years, it had progressively gotten worse to the point that I was having a lot of health issues. So,
Mm.
um, there was a period about a year ago when I was having like 5 migraines a week. And so I began to have to really slow down at work. And that was one of the things that I had been in the process of sort of starting to change whenever I found the information about your retreat, because I was just looking for something different. It seemed to me like, I had been on different antidepressants and anti anxiety medications since I was like in college and probably needed them actually much earlier, but that was when I finally got them. And I guess I'm one of those people who's just kind of resistant to those medications, because I would have an initial period of feeling better whenever I would start something new, and then, after a year or so, I would kind of go back into a depressed state, and it didn't seem like there was anything in my life triggering that. It was just sort of who I was by default, and so as my health got worse and I read more about, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, I was kind of looking for some sort of like spiritual journey. And I wanted to find a meditation retreat where I might be able to try psilocybin, because I'd heard such amazing things about it. But it was difficult. There weren't a lot of places that I could find, certainly not in the US. And I just got really lucky and stumbled across your website. And it was because I think you had an ad that popped up in my Instagram feed. And I was like, oh my God, someone's reading my mind. I'm so sorry. I have a new puppy. So if you hear barks,
Oh,
that's
it's
actually
fine.
not me. It's the dog. um, so I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I would say that, without exaggerating, I was a pretty unhappy person. I
Mm.
couldn't get out of this funk I was in. I was working too hard, and that had kind of become my whole identity. My whole life was wrapped in my career. And I realized my career was making me exhausted because I was putting too much of myself into it, but I didn't seem capable of pulling away because there wasn't something else to go toward. It was like I needed something where I was being productive and contributing and doing something that I felt was, giving back to society in some way. But it was sort of like I wasn't able to temper my amount of energy I was putting into it. I didn't seem to be able to just work at sort of like a medium level. I had to just go, go, go. I had all this perfectionist tendencies, I think. And so, that was the state I was in when I when I arrived at the retreat. I mean, I will say I have spent decades of my life masking depression and anxiety, and that there are many people who meet me who might be surprised to hear that I feel that way
Mm,
often. But I was so excited after I spoke to you on the phone prior to the retreat that I started to feel glimmers of hope even before the retreat.
mm,
And that was profound for me because suddenly there was something I had to look forward to with a specific date that was coming up where I knew for myself I was taking action to try to help myself. And
mm.
so suddenly, like even before the retreat, I started like wanting to eat better and wanting to, move around more. I still had very, very low energy though. And that changed after the retreat. But I'll let you ask your next question. I probably rambled on a bit there.
No, I love it. I love the rambling because it's just authentic and it's just coming from you. So please feel free. Whatever pops into your head or your heart, just say it. Someone out there just might need to hear that exact thing. So thank you for that. Now, let's just talk for just a brief second. You don't need to go into details about your work. And I know you said that your work was something that you're investing a lot into, but you enjoy your work, right? You're not someone who, we've had people who come to the retreat who just do not like their job anymore and feel really stuck and like they can't leave that thing. But that's not the
Mhm.
case for you. You were just pouring yourself so much into your work. Is that what I hear you saying?
That is partly true. The other part of it is that my work has changed a lot over, the course of my career. When I started my job, I'm in the information science profession, so I've worked in academic libraries and archives, since I was, out of grad school. And I have always enjoyed helping people. It's a way that I feel like I can serve others, but I also am kind of an information junkie myself. I have a lot of curiosity about things. I love learning new things. So yes, I always was drawn to, being a librarian or an archivist or, someone who was in the field of information. But what happened was, as I started to progress in my career and I started to supervise people and take on additional responsibilities, I no longer was doing the work of my career. I was doing the work of an administrator almost exclusively. And that was when I began to sort of feel like my soul was shrinking and I was really not finding, the fulfillment from my job that I used to because I was suddenly feeling like it was my responsibility to keep all these other people not only working and productive, but, in general satisfied and willing to stay at work. And some of this was happening during the pandemic at a time when it was very difficult to get people to come into work. And it
Mm.
took a toll on me and everyone that I worked with, but I think I lost track of your question. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
no, that's perfectly fine. So let me tie this back to you talking about masking your depression and that anxiety because you sound, and even from our very first conversation, like a very happy, bubbly person. You're the
Yeah.
first one to give out a compliment. Something I noticed about you at the retreat, you're always highlighting other people's things, like what they're good at or something really kind they said. I think that's just part of who you are. You just have a very sweet soul. So what does that look like for you when you say masking your depression?
Well, I'll be honest. I think that because of my job, I need to have a certain positive attitude. And I also need to appear really with it, like I know what I'm doing and, I'm responsible and in charge. But there are days when, it would be a serious struggle to get out of bed. And one of the problems I have is seasonal affect disorder. And in Indiana here in the winter, we don't have a lot of sun. And so I was running low on vitamin D, but I also was just running low on energy and exhaustion. And I was having to constantly interact with people in a pleasant, welcoming, inviting, persuasive way. And I felt like that was kind of hurting me more because I couldn't just be the way I felt.
Mm,
And so, it's not that every interaction I have with people is masking. There are genuine moments of happiness that I could feel, but it was always kind of fleeting. It wasn't a happy feeling that lingered.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And you're single, right? I mean, I just want the audience to know you don't have kids, single. Is that
I
correct?
I don't have kids. I have 3 pets now, and I have I guess
Those
at
are
my
kids. Those are kids.
I guess at my age, you would say I have a life partner. I was gonna say a boyfriend, but I'll say life partner.
Mm. I love that. Okay. So you find this retreat, you have this conversation with me, you have this little glimmer of hope that things, can finally switch around. Let me ask you, what made you think that this was going to be the thing that worked? You tried all these other things in your life. How did you Why was this the thing that gave you like the hope that maybe it could turn things around for you?
I think it was all the reading that I did about it. So one of the reasons I was looking for a retreat like this is a colleague of mine works with collections about the history of psychedelics research. And we've had so many conversations about the things she's discovered in these documents that kind of go into what people's psychedelic journeys are like.
Mm,
And she and I have talked for years as she's built these collections of like people's diaries and letters and scrapbooks and photos that document their lives and their changes throughout the psychedelic journey. She's been very impacted by that in a profound way, but she's never used them herself. Neither had I. And I kept thinking, okay, I'm hearing something that is similar to my story, which is the people who are being helped by this are feeling really like they're kind of at a dead end.
mm,
They're not really living, they're just in survival mode, and there's something missing that they can't quite pinpoint what it is, but there's no joy in life. There's just not the hope and motivation you would want to see to like go about your life in a wholehearted way, I would say. So I've had so many conversations with her, and she's educated me so much. She's shared research articles, and I know from her experience some of the history of these psychedelics. And when you read the testimonials, firsthand accounts of people who have gone through this, you cannot help but be severely impacted by the fact that you're hearing the same story over and over, which is, someone like me, maybe, who's been depressed or anxious most of their life. They didn't know why. They couldn't get out of that rut. They use psychedelics once, and when I say psychedelics, we're talking about psilocybin, but her research area covers other things too, like
mhm,
LSD, MDMA, things like that. So it's all these testimonials about people whose lives have been dramatically transformed, not just changed like a fun vacation weekend, but like you are a different person when you come back from that journey. And I craved that. I thought maybe this is the answer because the medications weren't working. I've been in therapy on and off for decades. Those things have helped me to a point, but I was stuck at that point and I didn't know how to move forward. And I was close to kind of not giving up, but feeling like, oh, this is just who I am. I'm always going to feel this way. And
mm,
so that hope was sparked when I began to see that other people just like me, who had been, kind of unhappy people, had had their lives completely turned around. And I thought, I don't even care if it's illegal. I don't care if I'm scared. I have to try this because I want to feel joy. I want to live.
mhm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so you get on a plane and you show up in Oregon where psilocybin is decriminalized. No one's
Yes.
gonna care. No one's gonna come knocking on the door and saying anything, so there's a little bit of safety in that. And, what were your thoughts? What was going through your mind? You're about to walk into a home with 4 other women and have an experience. Were you nervous? Were you excited? What was that like for you?
Well, I'd say it was all of the above. I definitely was nervous, but I think I was more excited because, and you'll probably edit this out because I just need to pay you some compliments here. But the fact that the way you have orchestrated this is extremely, it made me feel safe and comfortable from the beginning. And that was because you forced someone with severe social anxiety to talk with you on the phone twice, and then to join a group call of all of the other people
Mhm,
participating. So by the time I got there, you'd already answered any questions I had. You'd already walked me through what the process would be like, and I'd already met the other people.
mhm,
So it was like, much more excitement than nervousness. I will say the thing I was most nervous about, and still would probably not ever do again was the cold therapy.
Come
Because
on. You
hey,
wouldn't
I
go
grew
jump
up in
in the ocean
Louisiana.
again?
My bones is not used to that. I'm a Louisiana girl, so yeah, that was tough. But I will say it was extremely invigorating afterwards. It's just that fear of like, this is going to be very unpleasant. I was much less worried about the mushrooms. So
I love that. There's something for everyone, so that's okay that the cold therapy wasn't your thing.
exactly, because there was lots of therapy that was my thing. Like there were things I had never learned about or experienced that I found
Mhm,
so valuable, even beyond the psychedelic journey. Like, the tapping exercises we learned, which were so
mhm.
calming, and it was such a kind of nurturing experience with, I think her name was Kathy.
Yep,
Um,
Kathy.
it just felt like even though we hadn't even met her, she was there to help us, and
Mm,
it was a very positive energy and vibe. And I would say that was true throughout the entire experience, from your sister's amazing food to, just like being vulnerable with other people and feeling like we could do that, and we were going to take care of each other. We're not going to run off and like, tell each other stories to everybody, or
mhm.
shame each other. We are here not only to help ourselves, but, to kind of create this little community of people who've gone on this journey together. And I found that extremely rewarding. And I hope, that I'll be in touch with these women, throughout the rest of my life.
I'm sure you will be. So before we dive into your actual journey, what were some of the other things that weekend that maybe you hadn't experienced before that you think, "Oh my gosh, that was super impactful?"
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of had to take notes because we did so many things. And I think that what I appreciated about that was that, there was something for everyone, no matter like whether you like the tapping, maybe you like the yoga, maybe you like the dancing. I think the sound bath was really, really good for me because it felt spiritual and healing, and I didn't expect that really. I think I had was a little bit familiar with like singing bowls and things like that, and I thought they were really cool the way they worked and kind of vibrated the air around you. But I
Mhm,
didn't. I guess I didn't have a strong belief that like I would feel some sort of experience from being in that moment with like my eyes closed and someone going around the room, playing drums, playing the bowls. But that was profound. It was to me like what, maybe some people feel when they're in church. Like it felt like there was energy in that room that was healing and positive, and there
mhm.
was goodwill, and it just felt really good.
Yeah, it was interesting when, Hummingbird, the gal who led the sound bath, when she said, or maybe I asked, "How many of you have done this before?" And, like, none of you had done it before. It was the first time for all of you to experience that kind of healing, and it really is. I mean, and I've done it a few times now, and there is something about that, man, when she's walking around and she's banging that drum, like, right around your body, or
Yes.
that singing bowl. We are vibrational beings, and it
Yes.
just goes to your core. And I loved how, for me, this is also, I'll say, it's an experiment in a lot of ways on, like, how to facilitate a really powerful psilocybin weekend. And so we were doing the sound bath after the journeys on the integration day. And it
Hmm.
just happened to work out that her schedule was better for her to come prior to the journey. And I think there's something really powerful about that, is doing that kind of work and opening your body up prior to going into your journey. So,
I could
um,
not agree more. I'm
mm,
sorry to interrupt you,
no,
but
go ahead.
one of the things that happened, and I don't know how, maybe it was just the setting, the mood, but I started to sort of visualize things like I was on a psychedelic journey, not like surreal stuff, but
Mhm,
like I started while Hummingbird was going around, and especially in the times when she was close to me, I could feel that she was wishing me well, and that part of her
mm,
music, her sound that she was making was communicating to me some sort of something like love. And as I became more and more comfortable and kind of went inward, just listening, keeping my eyes closed, just listening to her moving around the room, I started picturing myself and my two grandmothers sitting kind of in a triangle shape. I had one grandmother on the left and one on the right of me, and there was like this triangle of gold light that connected the three of us. And we were holding hands, and I took some notes about it because I just couldn't believe that it came to me so clearly. So we were sitting there, and it was like there were these strands of our hair that had become braided together. And we were sitting there, and the hair turned into this rope that we were passing around to each other in this triangle. And it became like this burning cord that I realized was a connection beyond time. And that was so profound to me because my grandmothers have always been my heroes. They were completely different. My father's mother was very submissive and sweet, and you never heard a single complaint from her in her life. So I learned kindness and gentleness from her. But my other grandmother was a crazy, you know, firecracker of a woman who just was, she had mental health issues, but she, all what you do when my grandmother was in the room, and every person in the room obeyed what my grandmother said. So I had these two sides sort of what I thought of as almost like myself, coming from my grandmother's, the sweetness and the empathy and the compassion on one side, and then the strength, the creative energy and the more assertiveness coming from the other side. And I started to realize that that was all in me, and there was that connection between the three of us. And I just couldn't believe that all of that came to me just from sitting there listening to these sounds.
Wow, I got chills when you were
Yeah, me
talking there.
too.
Yeah, that's really profound. And there you go. There's a healing modality right there that if people aren't ready to dive into psychedelics, that sound healing could be the thing that maybe they start with,
I think
diving into that space.
that's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about preparing for the journey, drinking the tea, and going in. So, how are you feeling at that point, and what was that like for you?
Well, I was very impatient because I think was it that day or the day before that we did the cold therapy? I think it was that morning, wasn't
It
it?
was the morning of, right. So cold therapy was the Friday morning,
Yes,
and
and
then
we
we did the sound healing,
yes,
and
we
then Paul came and spoke. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So by the time Paul was there, I was like, I'm ready for this tea. So he was so lovely. I mean, all of the people that you invited into the space who shared their wisdom and their experiences with us were so very lovely, and they all each brought their own perspective, but Paul in particular touched my heart because I could tell he was giving his vulnerability to us. He was saying, he talked a little bit about what the mushrooms do in the body, and he's obviously an expert at botany, and knows way more about plants than I ever would. But he gave us the scientific side of what's happening with the mushrooms in the body and how they can heal the brain, they can heal the heart. But then he shared some of himself, and that was extremely touching to me because I had similar experiences to him. He talked about how, and I believe I didn't ask him this, but I think he might be the firstborn of his family, which I am as well. And there's something about being the oldest where all of your parents' expectations are kind of like on your shoulders from the time you're little. And Paul and I share a I would say not a bad relationship with our mothers, but a relationship that could be improved with our mothers, because we had mothers who had very high expectations, but they didn't work on a reward system or a encouragement system. They worked on a punishment system and a criticism system. And I have always been extremely sensitive since the time I was a kid. And if something hurt my feelings, I would cry easily, or, I would express how I was feeling. And I was always told by my mom, you have a bad attitude. You just have a bad attitude. You need to just get over that. Or, she would say, why did you get a B on your report card? And Paul brought this up too. Like, an A minus was never enough. It had to be an A. And if you got an A minus, you failed. And so I connected with him in what felt like a spiritual way, because he was saying out loud to a group of strangers things that are pains in his heart. And that really touched me. I felt like, if this man can be vulnerable with us, I can be vulnerable with everyone too. And I just said to him afterwards, and I'm still kind of embarrassed about this. I was like, "You have a gorgeous soul." and,
Oh, he does.
and he looked at me all seriousness, calm, and said, "So do you." And I
Mhm.
just immediately after that went upstairs. I had just drank the tea. And boy, was that an amazing way to start the journey, to feel like this person I didn't even know had already connected with me in some way, because we both were seeking healing. We both were seeking peace. We both were seeking, to let go of these past hurts and just move on with our lives.
Yeah. I think that's a journey of just human evolution, right? I mean, forever. He's done a lot of work and had
Yeah.
many psychedelic experiences, and just to like be able to be open and vulnerable about that and to know that it's not like those pains just go away ever. They just transform. You see them through a different perspective. You can find some forgiveness and love and grace. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that is just such a beautiful, just embodying the human experience, to be able just to go, yeah, it's hard to be a human.
Yeah.
Things can be challenging.
And that is such an important thing to realize. Even if you already are a compassionate and empathetic person, you will become more so after this experience, because you have a deep knowledge, a deep sense of truth that all life is connected. And you hear this over and over. You hear people say it over and over, but you don't really truly comprehend it until you feel it yourself. And it's not just feeling and knowing, it's like you realize this is a universal truth, and no one's going to ever convince me otherwise, that all life is sacred, all life is connected, and there is no death. I believe now that there is no death, and that was a profound realization that came out of the experience for me. And I think there were other people at the retreat with me who were dealing with recent loss, dealing with grieving, and I hope they had similar experiences. I don't know, but for me, it really allowed me to just lay down all this baggage I had been carrying for so long, and just say to myself, the people who hurt me made mistakes. I don't hate them. Some of it was misunderstanding, some of it was they were hurting, and I was able to just let it go. And those childhood memories and traumas are going to probably always be a part of me, and a part of anyone, but it becomes so much less a significant part of your life. It becomes something that you realize you are strong enough to move on from now.
It's really, really beautiful, Sammie. Okay, so you go upstairs, you lay down, and let's talk about that experience and what happened for you. So imagine, you're talking to someone who's never done anything before. What would you describe that experience of transitioning from this very 3D, everything's material, the knowingness of this world into the psychedelic journey?
Well, I will say it is very hard to put into words what it's like, but this is the closest I could come to that. I went upstairs, and I'll tell you more than you asked, and you can edit later. But I
No,
went
no,
up.
you just go. Tell me everything.
I'd had this wonderful exchange with Paul, so I'm feeling good. I walked up the stairs and immediately thought, "Ooh, I'm going to be sick." And then I thought, "No, I'm just going to lie down." So I put my earbuds in. You had shared this wonderful, group of music playlist with us that unfortunately I couldn't get to work on my phone while we were at the house. So I just pulled up some like chakra healing music that I found on YouTube. I put those earbuds in. I put the little shades. What's it called? Like eye mask. I'm
Mhm,
blanking
yeah,
on the name.
the eye shades, yeah.
Yeah, I laid down, and immediately, almost, I was in a different place. I knew that my body was in that room, but my mind or my soul or some part of me was somewhere else, observing something else. And it was the most amazing thing, because even when I was in the deepest part of the journey, I sort of had this grounded feeling of knowing I am in like a waking dream. Like I'm seeing these things almost like it's a huge movie screen, and I'm in a dark theater and I'm seeing these images. The main thing that I started to see was the closest I could compare it to is if you're in an airplane at night and you look out the window and you see this landscape, this background of black, but all over that black background are these dots of different colored lights. And you realize those are people, those are living things that you're seeing kind of glow from this dark background. So I'm looking at that and I realize, oh, I think I see some letters. I think I see some words. It was almost like, a clipping from a newspaper was in the corner of my eye, the corner of my screen, I guess you would say. And every time I tried to read those words, they would just disappear. But I began to see other things like, and oh, you prepared us so well for this. This was one of the most important things you did is that you told us that if anything fearful came up, to ask it what it was telling you, ask it what it was trying to show you. Don't withdraw from it, don't run from it. So the first thing that happened was, after I'd experienced these beautiful lights, was I started to see this huge glowing caterpillar on my screen. I'm just going to say screen because I don't know how else to describe it.
Mhm.
And it's moving along and it's coming at me and it's way bigger than I am. And I knew, or I still remembered, that I needed to ask it what it was going to show me. So I did. And the minute I did that, it was like it faded and disappeared. And so I was like, wow, that's cool. That actually worked. So then I'm really into it. Like, I'm not going to be afraid, of what I see. And a lot of it I don't remember. I remember that it was beautiful. And I remember that I kept thinking about love and connection and what was important in my life and what wasn't. And the notes I took during the journey, I still get chills when I read them because it's so, I mean, to me, it sounds profound. We all think we're brilliant, but it it also is kind of cheesy. It's kind of like, love guru-ish, but it's authentic. It's how you really feel, is that life is sacred. We all continue to exist in some form into infinity. We may have a bunch of different realities happening. We might have a bunch of different universes. I don't know, different time periods coming into collision. It was this understanding that there was so much more than we see and feel. And I guess it's the closest I have ever come to feeling like there must be God, there must be a creator, there must be some design or plan, because I could see that each life was so connected and important to the universe. Just this sense of like, I'm important and so is everyone else. And
Mm.
one of the things that I've struggled with my whole life, and I'm just going to be really vulnerable here. And oh, my cat thinks I'm being too vulnerable. Um, I just have had such horrible social anxiety. And one of the reasons for that is I was really picked on when I was a kid, and I was extremely sensitive, but also extremely gentle. So, like, when people would pick on me, I wouldn't stand up for myself. I wouldn't talk back. I would run away and cry. And so I had this history of being, little and just not being able to handle the sorrow I felt when I
Mm.
was rejected by other people. And that turned into this fear of people in general, this fear of being myself in front of people, this fear of standing out or being in the spotlight in any way. I have always kind of, since high school, I was a little more outgoing in high school, but when I went into college up until now, so, the last 20 something years, I've always worn like dark colored clothing, very simple. I drive a very, plain car. I was hiding. I was hiding from any potential interaction that might hurt me. And I thought,
Mhm.
if I blend in with the crowd, I won't get picked on. And so that stayed with me, up until the retreat. I still feel some social anxiety, but it is very, very different. It's more like, I know I just prefer one on one in small groups. I don't like large crowds. I don't like parties. I like a more intimate connection, and I really don't like chit chat because it makes me very nervous. I don't know what to chit chat about. I want to either talk about important things or not talk. And
Mm.
so, I had all these aspects of my personality that I wasn't crazy about, but I didn't know how to really change them. And the fear of other people was the most profound problem I was dealing with. And I just from this experience realized, and I wrote it down in my notes. Let me see if I can find it. It says something like, all the eyes I always thought were on me judging me are just eyes looking for their own sense of freedom and relief from pain. And it
Mm,
was like I realized that even if someone does make fun of me, that's their problem.
mhm,
That's their suffering that's coming out in that way. And yes, it hurts, but I can deal with it. I can cope with it. And I know in my heart that I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. So that has, I think, been the thing that changed the most, because when we did our letting go ceremony, where you had us write down something we wanted to
mhm,
let go of, I wrote down self-doubt.
mm,
And when we had our discussion with Kathy about tapping, and she said, "Where's the pain in your body?" I said, "My gut. It's in my
mm,
stomach." And I've had since I was about 20 years old, just daily, like, unpredictable gut health issues. It's been prescribed as gastritis and, a variety of different things, but it was stress. It was anxiety produced stomach aches and nausea and acid reflux. And I realized when Kathy asked where that pain was, and then when I talked with Paul after the retreat about, trying to get his advice on some herbs or something I could take to help with that. Before, I never told him what I wrote in that letting go ceremony. And I told him what my symptoms were, and he said, "That sounds like self-doubt." And I just about fell off the phone.
wow.
Because that was what I had written down that I wanted to let go of. And it's true. I don't doubt myself as much. I still have little doubts, probably like everybody does, but I know there are certain truths I know now that no one will ever argue me out of. And that is, life is sacred. We're all connected. There is no death. And we all are suffering, and we need to help each other. And those truths, I think, will stay with me forever. And they will continue, to help me become the person I want to be.
Mhm. It's like you laid a new foundation, like a new
Hmm.
truth for life, and now you can build upon that instead of building on the lies, and the stuff
Exactly.
that's not true, the beliefs that you have that were so ingrained in your mind that you thought were real, but were not, and you were giving them so much what credence, is that the word, or credit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're like, "Wait a second, why did I believe that? Hold on."
It's so
Wow,
true. It absolutely is true.
I love that. Um, okay, anything else about your journey in I mean, I know the journey is, 5 to 6 hours long, and there's probably a lot you could talk about, but is there anything in particular that also came up in your journey that you might wanna share that you haven't already talked about?
Yeah, I'll tell you a short funny story, and I'll tell you a more profound one. So the
Okay.
short funny story is, you're as we're about to ingest the psilocybin, you have these wonderful gift bags for us, where you're telling us, what each item in the bag represents and what you hope we take from it. And as you tell us about each item, we take a sip of the tea. I loved that because it felt ceremonial. It felt like a sacred ritual that a very small, intimate group was doing together in a way that connected us. So as soon as I consumed the tea and then, said embarrassing things to Paul, I went up the stairs, and I felt nauseous, and I laid down, and I started to go into the journey, and then I started to feel really nauseous and realized, oh, I need to go throw up. So I went into the bathroom to throw up, and I was like, "Ooh, I got to sit down for a minute." So I put my back against the wall, and I just kind of slid down to the floor and sat there for a second and was like, "Am I going to throw up? Yes, I think so." So I looked at the toilet, and we're all girls. We had the seat down. I lifted the seat. I saw what I thought was a tiny, microscopic, almost crab on the toilet. And I was like, "Oh, look at that cute baby crab." Okay, this is coming from the subconscious, where, we had been on the beach and it was just covered with these crab shells like the day that morning. But I look at this little thing and I'm like, "Okay, I cannot hurt this baby crab whenever I have my vomiting. So be very careful." So as I get my face closer to the toilet, I'm like, "Wait, is that a crab or is that?" And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, that is a tiny pile of sand granules that's fallen off someone while they were going to the bathroom. And I've just been, calling it a crab. So I blew it. I just kind of exhaled hard and blew the sand granules into the toilet. And then, I was like throwing up and everything. And then I felt so much better after throwing up. But I'm looking in the toilet going, okay, I'm pretty sure I threw up everything I just drank. Like, this toilet is full. So damn it, I'm going to have to drink this tea again. Which, the tea isn't terrible. It's just, for me, like, the texture was a little gross as I started to like feel like it was getting lumpy or something. So I was bummed that I was going to have to redo the tea. So I stood up, washed my hands, stepped out of the bathroom, and Jenny was right there. And Jenny said, "How are you doing?" And I was like, I think I threw up all the tea. I might have to go take more. And as I'm talking to her, I'm realizing, oh, no, I'm still feeling this. And she looks at me and she goes, why don't you go lie down? And so I went back into my bedroom. I had the lights off. I shut the door. I had my shades back on, my ear pods. And then I went right back into the journey. And that lasted for probably, for me, about 3.5 hours. And I don't know if you remember, but at some point I came downstairs. I can't even remember now why. Maybe I was hungry. Um, and I sat down at the table and I said to you and to Jenny and to another participant, I realized something that I think was a childhood memory. On this journey, I have a strong recollection of being small and someone putting their hand around my throat, not
Mm,
like choking me, but like trying to make me be quiet. And I don't know what that related to. I don't even know if it happened, but to me, it was very real. And it felt really good to think that was real, because suddenly I thought, this is why I don't talk to people. This is why I'm
mm,
afraid to express myself. This is why I don't like chit chat, because I think I'm going to embarrass myself saying something stupid, or
mm,
somebody's going to laugh at me, or, you know, I suddenly was like, what if this did happen? And that's why. What if I had this traumatic experience when I was little and I can get past it? What if I can just like trust people now, or, express myself and not care what they think? And I said to you, someone tried to stifle me. Someone tried to silence me. And you said, and they can't now, and now they won't, or something like that. And I was like, my God, you're right. I've realized the problem. I've faced that, I don't hate this person. If this did happen, it was either a miscommunication or they were in some sort of trouble or something. I
mm,
didn't feel anger. I felt relief that, like, maybe this was the reason for some of my hangups. And
mm.
that just like let me, I felt like I was like finally able to breathe. Like I was finally able to say, these problems are not my fault.
Yeah.
Or at least they're not all my fault. And that was very healing. So,
Yeah, it's like your throat chakra just can open up again. You
yeah.
can find your voice and express it. I love that I'm gonna go back really quick and just touch on this for you, but I love how you talked about how you would wear kind of gray more often, or just very like muted colors. And you said, my favorite color is red and I can wear red now. And on that last day, you had that red shirt on, when you were leaving. And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yes, woman, like you can be loud. It's okay." And for you, loud is wearing a red shirt, but
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
just love that. Like that little transformation right there leads to big transformation. It isn't like all of a sudden you're wearing, neon and saying, "Hi world, look at me." But even just that little sort of step into that
Hmm.
direction of being able to be more authentically yourself.
That's exactly right. That is the exact language I would use, is that
Mhm,
I suddenly was able to sort of embrace and be my authentic self and think, okay, if I do put myself out there and someone laughs or someone says something that insults me or hurts me, I am strong enough to cope with that. I can deal with that and I can move on from it. And I never was able to look past those fears before. I literally think I've spent much of my life since I was about 12, when I started to really experience mental health issues. I have, 30 something years of feeling very afraid of other people. And my father is like this to an extent. We're both quiet people who, I guess, some people might describe as very gentle. We take our own suffering and the suffering of other people and animals very. It's painful. Like it's silly, but if I see roadkill, like I want to cry. Like I can't. Um,
Mm,
I don't know how I've made it this far in life being this sensitive, but it's been hard. And I think now I have these truths like, yes, there's suffering, but there's also infinity. There's also no death.
mm,
And I think knowing those things and then knowing that it's okay to be myself because I am important too. And one of the things you said to us, you had us set down our goals and intentions beforehand, and that was so important to the process for me because I wrote down let go of self-doubt. I wrote down I am going to love myself. I took a piece of paper out of my notebook and wrote in big block letters I love myself, and I put it
mm,
right next to my bed so that if I took my shades off, that would be what I saw. But I
mm,
didn't need to. I knew that as soon as I saw that there were all these lives, and maybe some of them were plants. I don't know. I was just looking down at this, all of this light and all of this life, thinking this is all that matters. We're connected. I'm important. You're important. He's important. She's important. That's all that matters. And I wrote down in my notebook, and some people will disagree with me. I don't care. This is my opinion. I wrote down money corrupts, technology corrupts. The only thing that matters is life.
mm.
And that was profound for me. Now, whether people agree with that, I don't care because that mattered to me.
Sammy, that's really profound. So let's talk about today and now, 2.5 weeks out. One of the things, I want to talk about that self doubt, like where you're at with that. One of the things you said early on was that you're a different person. And I've had people say to me, they're afraid they're going to be a different person. It wasn't like they don't like themselves now, but they were just looking for something more. So, what does that mean, a different person for you? And then how have you been able to more authentically show up as yourself? I
Yeah.
know
Oh,
that's a
that's
lot.
such a
So,
great question because I think what's important about this question is that it points out that, you can go through an extreme transformation, but still be your true self. And that's what happened for me is that it was almost like shedding a skin or, a crab moving to a bigger shell. The essence of me that you
mm,
might call your soul or your spirit or, your heart, whatever you want to call it, the essence of me was the same, but I was letting go of all these fears and trauma and past pain and
mm,
always focusing on what I did wrong in the past or scared about what was going to happen in the future. I could just let that go and realize I need to live in the moment. I need to love myself before I can fully love other people. And if I don't take care of myself, then I can't take care of anyone else. So one of the things I'm writing down in my notes, during the journey is about how, my body is my home. I have never practiced good self-care, but in recent years it has been particularly bad because my stress level was so high that my exhaustion level was also extremely high. And I was not eating good for me. I was not being as active as I should be. All those things changed, but it didn't change my true self. It was like I was suddenly free of those fears and those past hurts, and I could fly. I could let that go and be my true self without fear. And of course I still have some fear. Of course I still don't want to be on camera sometimes or feel like my hair looks like crap or whatever, but it's not a fear in my gut of I'm a bad person or it's wrong for me to, put so much attention on myself when other people need my help. I was like, no, I came out of that and I was like, no, I am important. My body is my home. It may be a temporary home, but I take care of my home because it makes me feel better, not because I care what people think about my home. If I'm sitting in my home in my living room and it's full of clutter and junk, I'm unhappy. If I take the time to declutter, straighten up, and clean, I feel better. I can breathe more easily. I can think. It's just suddenly you realize that's your body. That's the home you're in right now, and you've got to take care of it if you want to feel good. And I had that had never occurred to me. To me, self-care was either selfish or egotistical, or people who had too much time and too much money. And it was like, no, I am going to take care of myself because I want to. I don't care what other people think. And that was so healing. That was very healing.
Mhm. Wow. That's really, really profound. How about your work? Have things shifted at work at all for you since you've been back?
Yes and no. So I'm extremely lucky right now to be on research leave from my job, but I do still have some work at, much reduced hours, but there's some projects I'm working on that will be completed in another month or so. And I think that what has changed the most in my own observations of like the meetings I'm in and things like that is that I'm speaking up more, and I'm not quite as worried about whether what I say might be conflicting or controversial.
Mhm,
I'm not saying things rudely. I'm not saying things
mhm,
in an angry way, but I am being candid in a way that I never was comfortable with before.
mm,
And it feels so good. Like I told a friend of mine on the phone last night, you don't realize how much you're hurting yourself when you hold in the things you want to say
mhm.
until you actually say them and are like, man, that felt good to get that out.
Yeah.
And so that's what my meetings have been like. And I even had a friend from work who, after the last meeting I was in yesterday, she texted me and said, I'm sorry if we're starting to get on your nerves, because I was being a little more blunt. And I said, oh no, you're not getting on my nerves. I just don't like being interrupted, because I kept being interrupted. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry if I interrupted you. That's just kind of my style. And I said, no worries at all. It actually wasn't you, and I'm not angry, but I just wanted to speak my mind, and so I did. And she was like,
Mm,
"Girl, you've done so much work on this, and everything you said was important. So don't you worry about speaking your mind." And I thought, she's damn right. I do have skills. I do have knowledge and experience.
mhm,
Why am I holding myself back? I don't care. I shouldn't care whether they. My job is to give them my experience and knowledge, and if they don't want to take it, fine. That's fine.
yep, yep, look at that throat chakra opening up, girl. Okay, last question, and then I'm gonna well, 2 questions, but what about your relationships? So with whether it's with your partner, whether it's with friends, family, have you noticed any shifts in your relationships with the other humans in your life that you care and love?
I definitely have. And what's amazing is, it's only been 2.5, maybe 3 weeks, but there's at least three examples I have of, how this has impacted my relationships. One of them is I have been more in touch with my mom. And, it's not like we have ever been estranged from each other, but we don't touch base a lot. She lives, back home in the South, and I live here in the Midwest, and she and I have very little to talk about because we have extremely different political and religious beliefs. And she continues to be a very critical person, although I don't think she's even aware of it. So I have, purposefully kind of limited our interactions to no more than, once every couple weeks or so in my adult life. And I find myself reaching out to her more. I find myself, if I start to observe her being negative, and in the past, this really bothered me because both she and I suffer from fairly extreme anxiety and depression, but I try to do everything I can think of to make it better, and she's kind of given up. And I get angry with her about that because I want my mom to be happy. I want her to live her full
Mhm,
life. And so when she gets into this negative bent when we're talking to each other, I just start to feel like I have to get away from this, or I'm going to fall into this pit with her.
mhm,
But I've started to realize, no, I can reach out to her, and even if she's negative, it can be a brief interaction just to let her know I care, just to reconnect. And so what happened, which was a pretty amazing thing, is a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, I just decided to adopt a dog. And talk about relationship changes. I have always been a cat person who loved dogs, but just did not feel I could deal with their amount of neediness. I didn't feel like I had enough energy to be a proper doggy mom. So I come back from the retreat and I'm like, I really want a dog. So I adopt this dog, It's a 4-month-old puppy. It's crazy. It's pooping and peeing everywhere. And suddenly I just take on this extreme calm. I don't know if it's like a
Mm,
therapy animal thing or if it's that I see that something else needs me. But, the dog's insane and I'm calm. And I'm
mhm.
thinking, is this the dog or is it a shift in me? I don't know. Maybe it's both. But to get back to your question, my mom and I started bonding on the phone about dogs because she has 2 dogs and she has a lot of knowledge about raising them. Excuse me.
It's all right.
I'm just going to take a drink for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
And she starts giving me advice about my new puppy. And it was valuable advice. And the love she feels for her animals was coming through. And it was like a very positive exchange we had that didn't feel so heavy and so sad. And I thought, gosh, maybe we can find more things in common like this. I just have to try harder and avoid politics, religion, or anything about my sexuality or creativity or anything that throws her off as a Southern Baptist mama, you know. So that has changed. And then I was in a relationship with someone when I went into the retreat. I came back probably within a few days. We broke up. We were broken up for a very short time and then we got back together, and because we talked through some things that had been bothering me this whole time, that I just didn't want to be confrontational. I didn't want to start an
Mhm.
argument. I didn't want to deal with how it might be upsetting to this other person. Well, suddenly I felt like I have to, because if I want this to be a good relationship, we have to be open and we have to be on the same page. So I
Mhm.
owe it to this person, even if it hurts them, to say, this is what you're doing that I don't like, or this is what you're doing that might make it hard for me to commit long term. And so we had that conversation and now our relationship is amazing. Like,
Mm.
I said some things, like that I tried to not be the nagging girlfriend before. And now I'm like, no, when you come to my house, I don't want you creating this huge mess and then leaving it for me. I need you to pick up your stuff. I need you to put trash away. I need you to, give some consideration to the fact that I feel better when I'm in a clean space and I've created that space. And now I don't want you to destroy it and leave me with a mess. So we talked about things like that, probably normal people would have talked about on day one, but it has had such a change in our relationship because my partner sees that I am doing what I can to make this work by being honest and saying, here's where I have some issues. And then vice versa, I'm hearing things, that I haven't heard before, that maybe there are certain ways that I don't always take their advice,
Mm.
or I don't always listen to the things that they're saying that might be different from the way I think about something. And so suddenly it's really helped us communicate better. And then I'll give you a very quick third example, which is I've had a friend for about 6 or 7 years now that I work with, and we got into an argument over, some she was dating someone I used to date, and it was completely my fault. She had asked me up front if it was okay to date them, and I was like, sure, I don't care. But then after she dated them, I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. How could you do that? um so it was completely my own fault, but I felt so bad about it that I couldn't help letting her know how hurt I was. So we argued, and I think I wasn't rude, but when I'm trying to be involved in conflict with someone I really care about, I kind of get jokesy. It's not necessarily sarcasm, it's more like trying to keep it light. And
Mhm.
I was doing that and I realized that was really traumatizing her. Like the look on her face, I
Wow.
could see I had hurt her deeply. So I apologized. But in my heart, I went home and was like, man, I kind of wish she'd apologize too. And so I stewed on that for a few days. And then I texted her and I said, I just really want to apologize. You did the right thing. You were a good friend to me. You asked me about this. I lied to you. I told you it was fine. It wasn't fine. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Um, and she said, thank you for that apology. But that interaction we had over dinner when we learned, that, when she told me she'd gone out with this person and I told them, oh, actually, they were kind of trying to flirt with me recently. We had this falling out, and she just kind of abruptly left the restaurant, and she never apologized to me. And I was holding on to some hurt about that because I wanted her to say, yes, you were wrong, but I get that we were both hurt by this. But she
Mhm.
wouldn't acknowledge that. When I said I was hurt too, she said, I get that the situation hurt you, but I didn't hurt you. And I said, well, I know you didn't hurt me, but what happened was you asked me, can I date this guy? And I said yes. And then I asked you 2 times after that if you were going to, and you said no. So I relaxed about it. I didn't think about it again. Then when I found out from you that you'd gone on a date with him, and incidentally, he's been texting me flirty messages during the same time, it was shocking for me too. It was hurtful for
Mhm.
me too, but she couldn't see that because it was so hurtful to her. And
Mhm.
I realized after a few days, I don't want this to ruin our relationship. I care about her. I was in the wrong. I'm just going to apologize again. So I apologized again, and I said, you don't need to apologize to me. I just want to be friends again. And she said, I
Mhm.
really appreciate that. That scene in the restaurant was very hurtful. And I said again, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to hurt you. But I was hurting too. And what happened was she never apologized, but I made peace with it. I said to myself, this was mostly my fault, which it was.
Mhm.
I wish she had said, I'm sorry you're in pain, but she didn't. And she's still hurting, and that's okay. If she never says that, it's okay.
Mm. Really profound. Just really being able to own your part, and that's all you can do,
Yeah.
in life, like, just owning your part of the story, owning your part of the situation, and then where it falls for the other person, that's on them, and being able to let that go and being able to really just go, "Yep, I did my part," and being, like, truly okay with it, not holding on to that. That's huge, Sammie.
I think so too. And I just feel love for her now and sorry that she went through that pain and wishing I could undo it. But just knowing that it's done and we have to move on, we have to go forward. So
I love it. Thank you for sharing those examples. Okay, my last question. So, what would you say to someone who's sitting on the fence, thinking about coming to a retreat like this or experimenting with psilocybin on their own if they can get their hands on it? What would you say to someone who was like, is this going to work for me or should I try this? What's your advice or feedback?
well, I would tell any human being that they should try it. But I wouldn't recommend necessarily like going out and doing it on their own. I think what's important about the experience I had with your retreat is that it was set up to be such a comfortable and safe, secure space where this very small group of people could bond over our shared pain and vulnerabilities and suffering, and we could speak freely and we could trust each other. And knowing that you were there and you had a nurse there, you had other people there who were checking on us, making sure we're well, we're not having a bad experience, we're not suffering, like all the things you did to prepare us. I went into it with very little fear, and then i I feel like that had an impact on what I experienced in the journey because my mindset going into it was, I can deal with this because if something does bad come up, I just need to remember, not don't run from it,
Mhm.
ask it what's happening. So I honestly feel like every human being would benefit from this. But I'm not a doctor. I think people should do what feels safe and comfortable for them. And for me, that meant for my first time being around other people who had experience in this area and who I trusted with my well being.
Mhm.
But I will say, I don't see anything wrong with, using it recreationally. I don't see anything wrong with, however people want to use it. It's just that for me, because I was wanting to heal and I knew that these past hurts were going to surface,
Mhm.
I needed to feel like I was in a completely safe space. And that's what the retreat provided for me that I couldn't have done on my own. I would have been afraid to experience the mushrooms without someone there who could kind of keep an eye on me and say, it's okay. If you're if you're freaking out or whatever, you're going to be fine. And that made all the difference for me.
Yeah. I love you, Sammie.
I
I
love you,
appreciate you.
Eva. You
Thank you
were
so
just
much for saying yes to this journey, saying yes to yourself, for trusting your intuition. I think a lot of times we don't trust our intuition enough. And especially when we've been hurt or when we're in those anxiety or depression moments or chapters of our lives, it's really hard to know, like, do I do this? Do I not do this? Do I go this way? Do I not go this way? And I'm glad that your intuition was loud enough that it got you there and that you've been able to have this transformation in your life. And I can't wait to talk to you. I mean, we're going to be friends forever now, but I
oh
can't wait
yeah.
to check in 3 months and 6 months and a year and just to see how your life is flourishing.
Well, I just can't thank you enough. And I see how you are impacting people's lives. And I just think we have to connect you to more funding, more visibility, more everything, because people are in so much pain that it actually makes me angry at the government for suppressing this for so long, and for it still being, illegal most places. It
Yeah.
makes me angry because we're paying so much money for medicine that doesn't help us, and it actually hurts us in a lot of ways. So God, why would we sit on this natural thing that has such powerful healing powers? Why would we keep that from people who are in pain? I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but this is why we can only do what we can do. We just have to do our part. And Sammie, you sharing your testimony today, that is your part. You never know who's going to hear this, whether it's listening on some streaming service or watching it on YouTube or wherever they find it, and they're going to make a change in their lives. And it's the ripple effect, right? If enough of us speak the truth about this, I don't think the momentum can stop. I think this is full force forward and it works. I mean, at the end of the day, it heals the brain, it heals the heart, it heals the soul. And I think that this is our answer to a lot of the mental health crisis and a lot of just opening up to who we are really as human beings and how we can work together and collaborate and make this world a better place.
Absolutely. So well said. I am sending you so much love and positivity and gratitude for how you have changed my life.
I love you, Sammie. Thank you so much.
Love you.
All right, Sammie, hang on one second. Let me just say bye to all the folks out there. Thank you so much for being a part of another episode of Ideas to Human Better. I really hope that if you feel called to step towards some kind of psychedelic, let the fear go. There are answers out there within going into yourself, going into your subconscious and not being afraid to see what's there and offering it love, grace, and forgiveness. I'm someone who came from a very, very PG background and never did anything growing up. I was very PG. And the data just over and over and over again shows that this works. And we can do 1,000 more studies that it's all going to come back the same. It's all going to show that this heals the brain. And whether it's with depression, anxiety, they're doing studies now around Alzheimer's, strokes. I wouldn't be surprised if this would heal the brain with people who have had traumatic brain injuries. I mean, it's just a powerful, powerful tool in our toolkit. So thank you again so much for being here. And until next time, have a great day, everyone.